Welcome back to This Old Mannequin. I'm your host, David Shablock. Today we're going to talk about cream makeup, using it with Moulage, which is, of course, we all know the fancy word for makeup for healthcare simulation. And that's what we're going to talk about, is just healthcare simulation-based Moulage. So, cream makeup. What is it? How do we get it? And that sort of thing. Well, it's the most widely used makeup in our industry, and it's everywhere. So you can't, open up a kit without seeing, some sort of cream makeup wheel. Usually they don't look this nice, and we'll talk about that. But there's several manufacturers out there, from, Ben Nye to Meron and Krylon and things like that. But they're just all over, and so if you're going to buy a Moulage kit, usually it's a staple for that. So I figured it was the nice thing that we should start talking about, how to use it, some of the safety things for people, for mannequins. And so first off, when you're dealing with it, you want to talk about safety. Safety for mannequins, safety for people, and that sort of thing. You never want to actually dig your finger in there. You want to use some sort of application device, because it's a cream based. It's got several things in there, such as pigments and different things to allow the pigment to transfer to the surface, but those are not really sterile things. So the number one thing you want to do is, you're never going to take an applicator and dip it in here and dip it on a person, and then dip it in here and dip it on anyone else. Either that is now that person's makeup wheel forever, or this goes in the trash. And so a lot of times when I talk about this, I always tell people, if you cannot guarantee that none of this has been on a person and then stuck back in the pot, you need to get rid of it. So that's number one, safety. We also don't put applicators directly into here. The one thing that happens is then we, of course, cross-contaminate, and we get brown or black or all the colors mixing, and it's really bad. So we don't do that. We actually want to use something to dig the pigment out of there and repot it onto something else. So you can get nice mixing palettes off Amazon. They're pretty cheap. They come with a nice little applicator there, and I use that. You can also go to the art store. Go to any of the major art stores, and they have disposable palette paper, and it's like a waxed paper, and you can usually comes in large sheets of it, and you can cut them up, you can put it in your kit, and therefore you can just use it and throw it away. So it's nice because I don't have to clean it later. These I have to clean. But if we're going to talk about getting our pigments off or out of the palette, or depotting them, you want to use something like this. Or a lot of times I just use a good old tongue depressor. And a lot of times what I'll do is I'll just cut it up, cut a nice angle on it, then I'll break it down. That's a little small. Break it down again into something like this. That way it's disposable. I don't care about it. There's no emotional attachment, and I don't have to clean it later. So that's why I like pad paper or palette paper a lot as well. So what you want to do is choose whatever color that you want, whatever effect you're going for, and we'll get onto more of that in other videos. But if we're just talking about the cream makeup, we want to dig some of that out of there, like that, and then put it on our palette. And we put that to the side. This is the only color that will ever be on here. So, then what do we do with that? Well, the number one thing that I see a lot of people using, and I use it myself with cream makeup, is a latex-free makeup wedge. We don't want to get in the habit of using latex in any way, shape, or fashion, so please, just whenever you can, for the safety of your standardized patients, role players, or anything like that, just don't use latex in your kits if you can help it. But if we have a makeup wedge, we never want to use it like this. And the reason is there's nice sharp edges on it. And for most of the effects we're going for, we want an organic sort of texture. We don't want sharp. We're also not painting, so we're not wanting to put brush strokes on. We're wanting to put areas of high and low concentration of pigment. And that's going to put a nice sharp edge on it. So the first thing you should always do with these is just pick apart the edge. You can do it pretty quickly. And you can do this beforehand as well. A lot of times I'll dig right in the center, make a nice little divot in there. And if you look, it leaves you a nice rounded off and non-conform texture on it. And that's what we're doing. We're trying to build up a texture. We're usually trying to, especially when we're talking about a bruise, you want to think about a nebula cloud, a space cloud, or clouds in general. You want areas of high concentration, low concentration, and you never want to do brush strokes. If you're a traditional artist and you're used to that, you're used to other effects also where you need to do more of, gradients and things like that. If you're not, and you're used to just like printing off an inkjet printer, an inkjet is just spraying tiny little dots. Or if you'd like take a magazine, if you could find one nowadays, and take a magnifying glass and kind of draw in that, you'll see it's just made out of colors. And that's how you get transitions, that's how you get better effects and it looks better. But from that point on, what you're wanting to do is dab on here. And get some pigment on here. And whenever you're working with a makeup, you have to think of kind of how it is and how it's made to know if this is the right applicator for that. This is a nice creamy thick texture, therefore it's going to sit on top of that sponge. But if you have a pigment system where it's a low viscosity, such as an alcohol pigments, it's going to suck all of it into the sponge, and therefore it's going to be harder to get that out onto the patient or the mannequin or anything like that. So just a little tip there. Cream makeups work great for sponges. I like them. The other thing is when you pick off all these little pieces off of your makeup sponge, you can use those as wound filler, you can paint them, you can dye them and things like that and use them for other things. So if you're thrifty like me, you might save that and use it for other things. So when you are trying to apply this makeup, we'll say a bruise. It's the number one thing that we teach on. You want to make sure that you are putting it on in non-uniform. And I kind of call this the dance. Okay? You want to do different areas and you want to kind of dance that color on there. And so we're just going to dance on some pigment. Now some of this is a little thicker. I'm doing this quickly on myself with a video, but what I want you to do is don't get freaked out. You're not locked into anything. So there's usually ways of fixing your mistakes later. But for the art of moulage, which is makeup at 100 miles an hour, we can put on some pigments very, very quickly and dance those on, okay? And then this makeup wedge is done. I mean, yes, I could rip off the back end of this and use this one. I wouldn't recommend using this because the biggest thing is we don't want to cross-contaminate. We don't want to mix colors unless you're ready for that and that's your intent. But for the most time when we're working with just one color and want to keep one color on there, you don't want to mix. Of course, if you're using this and you're not in the pot, even if you mix colors, the worst thing that happens is you throw this away and you get another one and you use another area on the palette. So from this point on, you can use other colors. I like when I do my bruises using at least 3 colors. You have to think about the age of the bruise to what color goes into a bruise, and that's a conversation for another time. We're trying to stick with just the cream makeup and how to apply it and how to do things with it. Well, if you look on here, I've got some pretty deep areas and they're non-organic textures. They're kind of, lines and things like that. So the first thing that I usually do is I jump to grab some 99% isopropyl alcohol. Anything 90% and above is good to keep in your kit for a number of reasons. But for this, what I'll do is I will just spray some on my finger. And then I'll just tap it away. And all I'm doing is basically liquefying some of that pigment, some of the high concentration, and I'm moving it around a little bit. And I could take something that would move it off me, but right now I'm just wanting to make a nice area of irritation. And then I go around my edges and I blend them in a little bit. You don't want to have a donut of color. Remember, we don't want high concentrations from a brush or anything like that. Well, the other thing is, we focus so much on that bruise that sometimes we forget to look back, and you'll sit there and right before you send somebody out for a mass cache or you start a sim, you'll be like, oh, I see a donut, I made a donut. And donuts are fun to eat, they're not good for makeup. So you want to make sure we're blending those edges out so that it looks like more of a an organic texture and that sort of thing. And like I said, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to do anything to build up texture, to actually make, organic shapes, not, CAD/CAM built hard stuff. So you can really use whatever you want that'll get you some good texture. Another thing I'll do is I'll take a stipple sponge, clean stipple sponge, and I'll do that, I'll spray that with alcohol. And what that'll do is that will give me a little bit of a different texture and that sort of thing. You can actually, if you make sure you keep these clean and do not use this on another person, because cream makeup will transfer ick. We do not transfer this cream makeup I put on somebody onto somebody else. But we talked about that already. But what I could do is come over here and pick up some of that and add another color and add little tiny capillary bursts and things like that and give you higher concentration. Another thing we'll do is sometimes I will take a paper towel and I'll bunch it all up. You can get a nice texture on that, nice grouping on there, and I'll spray that with a paper towel, or spray that with 99% isopropyl alcohol, and I'll dab that on. And what that's doing, again, we're trying to do different things to make texture, to either add more pigment or take some off, but in non-uniform, non-contiguous areas, okay? Another thing to talk about is brushes, and you can buy the very cheapest brushes in the world on Amazon or wherever you want to buy your brushes from, or you can buy the really, really expensive brushes. These are made by Delium. I love them, they're great, but I use the cheap ones a lot more often. A lot of that has to do with being lazy. I don't want to have to clean this that often. I don't want to have to basically clean it. I don't want to have to care about it, because when I don't care about it, I can just throw it away. So a lot of times, especially for education, I will buy these, because if I can't get it cleaned lightly, I throw it away. One of the biggest differences I see, yes, the bristle, the way they make the bristles, the shape of them, the cut of them, when you buy a better brush, it's going to hold up more. It's not going to bend or anything like that. It's not going to break. The other thing has to do with the glue. So you can use a lot more aggressive cleaners on a more expensive brush. So if you know that, you know what you can clean it with. So I usually clean mine with 99% isopropyl alcohol that I already have in my kit. So we try to keep this clean. Or there are brush cleaners I use as well. If I would try to use acetone with this, those bristles are just going to go whoosh, like a dandelion in the wind. So just know you get what you pay for. The other thing is I'll use cheap art brushes. So these are just, very cheap art brushes. And a lot of times what I will do is I will cut them, or I'll slam them on the table and actually try to break that up. And what I'm doing is giving a non-uniform way to get pigment off my palette and onto the patient or the simulator or whatever I'm doing. So I'm going to grab a little bit more red, put it on my palette again, take this and kind of jam it and mar it up and that sort of thing, and then I'm going to try to just pick up a little bit of pigment. We'll see how that does. And if you notice, especially what I'll do is I'll spin it, I'll do the dance again. And I can get a much higher concentration, but in a non-uniform way. And if I don't like that, if I want to break it up, again, I can go back to the alcohol. And break it up and that sort of thing. So now we're going to talk about mannequin skins and using cream makeup on mannequin skins. And the biggest thing you have to know is what your mannequin's made out of, okay? If you don't know, try to find out. There are a lot of the social media groups and things like that where if you don't know, you just ask. Send a picture, drop it in there, say, hey, what's this mannequin made out of? What can I use on it? What can I not? because different problems are going to need different solutions. So if we talk about the majority of mannequins in the past going into the future, you've got PVC. Okay, so things like there's a lot of Laerdal, Nasco, and other manufacturers that have PVC-based skins on their mannequins. And I love PVC-based skins. The reason is because everything sticks to it. All my traditional dressings and things like that stick to it. So for the right effect, it's great. I can do an IV Tegaderm on it. I can do a UV or a Foley securement device or anything like that, and it's going to stick to it. The only problem is everything sticks to it. So it's a porous skin, especially after you've cleaned it a few times, and things can go into it. So if you look at this, I've not used anything to protect it, and I've gotten stains on it. Now I've done this on purpose for education to show you, but we can have different ink stains, and we've talked about that in some of the other videos, how to get that off. But the biggest thing is you want to protect yourself, you want to protect your skins so that you don't stain your mannequin. Well, how do I do that? There's a number of ways of doing that. We'll probably have a future video on it, but quickest way I try to do is either Tegaderm, because it's PVC, it'll stick to it, but some people don't like that because it's shiny and it's obtrusive and you can see it's a dressing. Ben Nye Final Seal, I've had some good luck with. Use with caution, test these things out first. You're on the hook if you're going to use it, don't blame me, but Final Seal is a makeup sealer, and we use it to seal a lot of makeup, like cream makeups. Well, what I'll do is I'll put that on my skins and I'll seal the makeup, I'll seal the skin first, and I'll put a nice layer, and that's a little thick, and I'll let it evaporate and that sort of thing, and put it on there. So another skin material is silicone. And again, I love silicone. For the right things, silicone's great. You just have to know what you can do and what you can't do. So unlike PVC that everything sticks to it, the only thing that sticks to silicone is silicone. So it has to be something that will actually stick to silicone, whether that's a temporary adhesion or it's a permanent bond. So like this skin here has had a repair done to it with a silicone bonding agent that will, for the most part, stick it together forever. Well, a lot of times when we're talking about moulage, we only want a temporary stick, okay? So that's why when we talk about gluing things onto these mannequins, we want to get a silicone-based adhesive. It has to have silicone in the name sometime. But we've talked about that a lot in the past. So putting cream makeup on both of these is a different approach. We talked about with PVC, we want to protect the skin, and with silicone, we just know that nothing's going to really bond to it. It's going to rub off. And that's where we talk about a unique problem with cream-based makeup. If I take this arm here that has a bruise and it's dry and it's not sealed, but it's definitely been on there for a while, and I rub it over here, now that's transferred over there. So we're going to talk about how to stop these things from transferring. Okay, so real quick, I'm going to try to use this because it's right close. Usually you need a makeup remover. With cream makeup, you don't need anything really high-end, but something that will get it off. Some sort of actual makeup remover. Soap and water is where I start first on people. But we're going to try to get the majority. It's got a little bit of a red haze on there, but for the most part it's off. So how to seal these things? So the number one thing people will talk about is using something like a no-color powder. And this is a very famous no-color powder. The only thing I find is that it has a little bit of color. And I know the name is no-color powder, but no matter what you do, it will still have some sort of white in it, and it will mute your colors a little bit. So, but what it's doing is it's kind of drying that makeup out first. And you want to put this on a palette and then use this on a brush. You don't want to do what I just did, because now that's kind of trash. So if you do this, it's going to pull a lot of the liquids out of it, and it's going to be transfer resistant. It works pretty well. It's not bad. A lot of people will use baby powder in a pinch. It works sort of okay. But what I use most times is bentonite vinyl seal. Again, if I spray this on there and it's not gobs of pigment, not thick caked on pigment, it's a light, you know, this is an area of irritation. But I just do some little sprays on here and it's going to be pretty waterproof. It's going to be pretty transfer resistant. It shouldn't get on clothes and stain it like you can get. And that works pretty well. It's what I use. Okay, so now we're going to talk about how to put pigment onto these skins. It's the same way. We're wanting to put dabs of colors on there, okay? So, I'm not worried about it transferring ick to a Manikin, so I'm going to use this and I'll clean it off later and make it pretty sterile. But I'm going to do the same sort of thing. I'm wanting to dab color on there. I always leave the center clear because a lot of times we're doing blunt force trauma, and usually, not all the time, you will get the area of impact will remain clear. So that's pretty chunky, pretty rough, but it's going to get the effect. So what are we going to do next? We're going to take our alcohol on our finger and kind of tap it out. Is it perfect? No, but it'll meet a learning objective pretty quickly. We can again use the stipple sponge and kind of bring it out. You just want to use anything that's going to give you some nice texture. And again, if we build this up with a few different colors, it'll meet the effect pretty quickly. So again, unless you seal it, it's going to be pretty transferable. It's going to get on the patient's gown. It's going to get on the people that are going to be working on the patient and stuff like that. Okay? So, silicone skins are the same sort of way, but again, nothing really sticks to silicone. So, one thing I was thinking about is if I put something like Smooth on a Fix, which is an adhesion promoter. It leaves things kind of sticky. I'm wondering if that wouldn't be a good barrier that would allow the pigment to stick and not just rub right off. But I didn't have that readily available, so we're just going to do this. But it's something I need to test later on. So again, the same sort of effect. And there you go. Now, like I said, either one of these, if I rub my finger through it or I'm doing CPR or whatever, it's going to rub right off. Same thing with the silicone. I mean, it's going to come completely off. So you want to seal it in some way. Again, my go-to is a good makeup sealer. You don't have to use bentonite vinyl seal, but a good makeup sealer will hopefully keep that on there some. Silicone's a little dodgy because again, nothing really sticks to silicone but silicone. So hopefully that gives you some good options and ideas of how to do this. The other thing I wanted to talk about real quick is RMG or grease makeup. That's some of this stuff over here, and you'll see it in the same sort of wheels. A lot of times when you buy a Moulage kit, you will see big tubs of it because it's got some other additives to it, castor oil and other things. Or you'll see elaborate palettes like this from Kryolan. It works a lot of the same way that cream makeup does. You have to use a powder to set it or a makeup sealer or both. It's just a little bit more creamy. It was actually built to color latex things. So like in the movie industry, it was made to not break down latex because I guess cream makeup can. I've never seen it, I've never had that thing, but that's what I'm told. So grease makeup works kind of the same way. So this is still a little bit wet, so I can't really show you here, but it does not transfer. I'm trying to find a dried area. does not transfer to my hands as easily, but of course when your fingertips are already red, it's hard to show that. So I think that pretty much takes care of the basics of cream makeup. This wasn't intended to teach you how to do a great bruise, because these are not great bruises. This is just showing you how to work with cream makeup. What's really nice about cream makeup is you can mix and blend things easier when you're doing things onto skin. You can get a better gradient, you can, better transition between colors, things like that. The other thing is you can use them around the eyes. You're not going to want to use bentonite final seal or an evaporant that has any sort of things that are going to irritate somebody, real person's eyes. But it's safe to use around the eyes. Then you can use gentle makeup removers to get it away from the eyes. Things like alcohol makeups, because you're using 99% alcohol, it evaporates your eyes, it hurts your eyes, it's not kind to your role players. So cream makeup is really good for that. But if you have any questions or anything like that, please feel free to reach out. If something I did you disagree with, or you have a better point, please leave comments. And I look forward to seeing you on the next episode of This Old Mannequin. Again, my name is David Shablock. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.